Welcome, dear listener, to the Hercule Poirot Story Podcast, where every note hides a secret and the curtain never truly falls. Tonight, in the gilded shadows of the Royal Opera House, a count is stabbed mid-aria, a black pearl rolls free, and the chandelier itself plots murder. Pour your Chianti, dim the lights and subscribe now. Apple, Spotify, or wherever mysteries bloom, so you never miss the moment the final note reveals the killer. The overture begins, and the phantom is about to take the stage. Chapter 1. The Phantom Note in the Royal Box. The Royal Opera House shimmered like a jewel box flung open to the London night. Gas mantles hissed along the grand staircase, gilding the crimson carpet in molten amber. From the pit, the orchestra tuned in a restless shimmer of strings and brass, while above, the great chandelier, 5 tons of crystal and bronze, hung like a frozen aurora. It was the gala premiere of La Bohème, 1933, and society had turned out in pearls and white tie, hungry for Puccini and gossip in equal measure. Hercule Poirot occupied a modest stall near the royal box, invited at the insistence of the Home Secretary, who feared continental mischief among the diplomatic corps. Poirot had accepted with a twirl of his moustache. Opera, he declared, was murder set to music. Tonight he wore immaculate evening dress, a white camellia in his lapel, and the air of a man who could solve a sonata with the same ease as a stabbing. The house lights dimmed to a conspiratorial glow. The conductor raised his baton, the overture swelled, and the curtain rose on a garret aglow with bohemian squalor. Mimi entered candle-trembling, voice soaring into the first aching phrases. The audience leaned forward as one spellbound. Act 3, the tavern scene. Snow fell in perfect flakes of soap and silver paper. Rodolfo and Mimi quarrelled in liquid Italian. The chorus stamped and laughed. Poirot's gaze, however, drifted upward to the royal box, tiered in scarlet velvet and gold leaf. Count Alessandro de Rossi lounged there, alone, a crimson scarf knotted at his throat like a wound. 45, olive-skinned, with the languid cruelty of a Renaissance poisoner. The Count was whispered to traffic in more than antiquities. Rembrandts vanished from Florentine villas. Titians from Viennese palaces, all funneled through his gloved hands. The soprano, Signora Elena Valenti, throat of nightingales and temper of Vesuvius, launched into O Soave Fanciulla. Her voice climbed pure and perilous toward the high sea that would shatter hearts. The orchestra held its breath. The Count leaned forward, glass of champagne poised. A single crystalline note pierced the air, not the soprano's, sharper, deadlier, a note that belonged to no score. The Count's head snapped back. The champagne flute tumbled, arcing crystal and gold in a slow, glittering parabola. It shattered against the box's brass rail. The Count slumped sideways, crimson scarf, blooming darker, a jewelled stiletto buried to its hilt beneath his jaw. The blade's handle, a miniature operatic mask enamelled in black and gold, glinted once in the footlights, then stilled. For one heartbeat, the opera continued. Mimi's voice soared, oblivious. Then a woman in the stalls screamed. The sound ricocheted off the dome like a bullet. The conductor's baton froze mid-air. Violins squealed into silence. The snow machine coughed, then died, flakes drifting like ash over a corpse. Pandemonium. Ushers surged. Diplomats scrambled. A duchess fainted into a baron's arms. Poirot was already moving, patent heels clicking across the aisle with the precision of a metronome. He reached the royal box as the stage curtain jerked down in frantic folds. "Fermez la porte," he commanded in rapid French. An usher obeyed, slamming the gilded door and shooting the bolt. Poirot surveyed the scene with the reverence of a priest entering a desecrated chapel. The Count lay crumpled against the velvet balustrade, eyes wide in polished surprise. Blood traced a perfect comma down his collar. The stiletto was exquisite. Venetian, 16th century, its blade etched with tiny musical notes. A prop, Poirot noted, from the on-stage duel in Act 2. Yet the duel was fought with blunt steel. This blade was honed to surgical malice. He knelt, careful not to disturb the pooling champagne. Beneath the Count's gloved hand lay an opera libretto, open to Act the Third, Scene 2. A single page had been torn free, the ragged edge fluttered like a white flag. On the remaining margin, someone had scrawled in crimson ink, "The kiss of death, midnight." The ink was still wet. Poirot's monocle flashed as he scanned the box. No footprints in the thick carpet, only the Count's own, leading from the door to his chair. The champagne flute had shattered outward, suggesting the throw came from within the box. Yet the door had been locked from the corridor. The key still hung on a crimson tassel inside. The windows, leaded, painted shut since the war, showed no sign of tampering. A black pearl rolled from the Count's cuff, coming to rest against Poirot's shoe. He picked it up with a silk handkerchief. Perfect, lustrous, the size of a musket ball. The Count's cufflink was missing its twin. From the auditorium, muffled chaos. Shouts, the crash of overturned chairs, the soprano's voice rising in hysterical Italian. Poirot rose, twirling his moustache. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "but this is a murder of the most operatic insolence, stabbed in a locked box during the high C with a dagger from the stage." The killer conducts his own overture. He opened the libretto to the bloodied page. The missing leaf corresponded to Mimi's final aria, Sono andate, the moment she realizes death is near. Someone had planned this with the precision of a maestro. The door rattled. A voice, Inspector Japp, Scotland Yard, bellowed through the wood, "Poirot! Open up, man!" Poirot unbolted the door. Japp burst in, followed by 2 constables and the theatre manager, a harassed man with a face like a crumpled programme. "House is sealed," Japp panted. "No one in or out. The stage door's guarded. What the devil happened?" Poirot gestured to the corpse. "A private performance, Inspector. The Count received his encore, posthumously." The manager wrung his hands. "The stiletto. It's from the prop table. Signed out at interval by the understudy, Carlo Bianchi. He's vanished." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then we begin with Signor Bianchi. And with this." He held up the black pearl. "A clue that rolls, like the plot of a Verdi tragedy." He stepped onto the balcony overlooking the auditorium. Below, the audience milled like startled birds. On stage, the snow still fell in lazy spirals, catching the footlights in a mockery of innocence. Poirot raised his voice. "Mesdames et messieurs, your attention, s'il vous plaît. The opera is paused, but the drama continues. Remain in your seats. Hercule Poirot will now conduct the investigation." A hush fell. Even the snow seemed to listen. Poirot returned to the box, closing the door with a soft click. He knelt once more beside the Count, lifting the crimson scarf. Beneath it, a second wound, a pinprick at the throat, ringed with purple bruising. "Poison," he said softly. "The stiletto was the flourish. The true aria was sung earlier." He slipped the libretto into an evidence envelope, the black pearl into another. The clock above the proscenium read 10:47 p.m. The high C had struck at 10:42. 5 minutes to plan, execute, vanish. Poirot stood, dusting imaginary lint from his lapel. "The curtain falls on Act 1, Inspector, but the fat lady has not yet sung." Outside the box, the orchestra pit yawned dark and empty. Somewhere in its depths, a single violin string twanged, a lonely, dying note. Chapter 2. The Catacombs That Sang Back. The Royal Opera House had swallowed its own scream. Above, the auditorium was a hive of sealed exits and restless murmurs. Below, the understage catacombs breathed cold, damp centuries. Hercule Poirot descended the iron spiral behind the proscenium, lantern in one hand, evidence envelopes in the other. Inspector Japp clanked behind, muttering about theatrical lunatics, while Hastings brought up the rear with a flashlight that jittered like stage fright. They passed beneath the orchestra pit, a forest of music stands and coiled cables, the air thick with rosin and panic sweat. A rat skittered across a timpani skin, drumming a muffled heartbeat. Poirot paused at a trapdoor marked "Property of His Majesty's Government, 1803. The padlock was new, brass gleaming, but the hasp had been filed through with a jeweller's saw. "Napoleonic smuggling tunnels," Japp grunted. "Used for gunpowder, then gin, now, who knows?" Poirot's reply was to swing the trap open. Stone steps spiraled into velvet darkness. The lantern revealed graffiti in faded ochre, Vive l'Empereur beside a crude sketch of a guillotine. The air tasted of rust and forgotten arias. 20 feet down, the tunnel widened into a vaulted chamber the size of a small chapel. Mirrors, cracked, silver-backed, salvaged from old productions, lined the walls, throwing fractured reflections of Poirot's moustache into infinity. In the centre stood a rosewood phonograph, its horn lacquered blood red. The turntable spun lazily, though no hand had touched it. A warped shellac disc hissed with a single looping note, the same high C that had killed the Count. Poirot lifted the needle. Silence fell like a guillotine. "Recorded at 10:42, he said. "The murder note was not live. It was mechanical. The killer needed 5 minutes of chaos above to work below." He examined the phonograph. Beneath the felt turntable lay a leather-bound ledger, pages crisp as autumn leaves. Names, dates, prices. Rembrandt, Portrait of a Rabbi, 42,000. Delivered Venice, 14/23/32. Titian, Venus with Mirror, 58,000. Buyer initial EV. The Count's handwriting, elegant, vicious. The final entry dated yesterday. Black pearl necklace, 15,000. Payment in full tonight, RB. Japp whistled. The Count was fencing more than paintings. That pearl was payment, Poirot finished. And now it rolls free. A glint in the corner, a violin string silver wound, stretched between two iron hooks like a garrote. Fresh blood freckled its length. Poirot followed the string's trajectory to a heap of velvet curtains. He pulled them aside. A body, male, mid-30s, dressed in stagehand black, lay crumpled like a discarded marionette. Throat bruised purple, eyes bulging in eternal surprise. A prop tag pinned to his lapel read, "Carlo Bianchi, understudy." The stiletto wound in the Count's throat had been a rehearsal. This was the dress performance. Hastings recoiled. Good Lord, strangled with his own tool. Poirot knelt. The stagehand's fingers clutched a scrap of sheet music, Puccini, but the notes were wrong. Someone had overwritten the soprano's line with a cipher. EV pays in blood. Beneath the body, chalked on the stone in luminous paint, visible only under Poirot's ultraviolet torch, was an outline of the Count's exact posture in the royal box. Arms akimbo, head tilted, scarf blooming. The killer rehearsed the murder twice, Poirot murmured. Once above, once below. The stagehand discovered the ledger. He was silenced to protect the buyer, EV. He traced the chalk with a gloved finger. The outline was precise to the millimetre, a photographer's memory or a painter's. From the tunnel's far end came a sound, soft, deliberate, footsteps on wet stone, retreating. Japp drew his revolver. Poirot raised a hand. Attendez, the catacombs connect to the old Covent Garden market. Pursuit is futile, but the echo, he cupped an ear. The footsteps faded into a faint rhythmic tapping. Morse? No, a cane. They followed the sound to a bricked-up archway. The mortar was fresh, still damp. Poirot pressed his ear to the bricks. Behind them, a muffled sob, female, Italian. Then silence. Japp scratched his head. We'll need sledgehammers. Non, Poirot said. We need the score. Back in the mirror chamber, he wound the phonograph again. This time, beneath the high C, a second track emerged, barely audible, a contralto humming Addio dolce svegliare. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by a click. Poirot lifted the disc. On the reverse, etched with a needle, coordinates, flies, grid 7, beam 4. The flies, Hastings said, above the stage where the scenery hangs. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The killer hides in plain sight among the gods. They ascended a ladder into the flyloft. A cathedral of ropes and counterweights, canvases painted with Parisian garrets and Tyrolean snowscapes. Grid 7, beam 4, a wooden crate stenciled, property of Signora Valenti. Inside, the missing libretto page soaked in champagne and belladonna. Beside it, a black velvet pouch. Poirot opened it. A cascade of black pearls, 19, one short of a necklace. The payment, he said, delivered then stolen back. The Count was double-crossed. A shadow moved behind a flat painted with a moonlit Seine. Poirot spun. Lantern raised, nothing. Only the creak of ropes and the distant wail of police sirens converging on the opera house. Japp holstered his gun. We've got a dead smuggler, a dead stagehand, a poisoned libretto, and a necklace, short one pearl, and the prima donna's initials all over the ledger. Poirot closed the pouch. E.V., Elena Valenti. She sings Mimi tonight, but her true role is buyer. The question is, who stole the final pearl? From the crate's lid, a single drop of blood fell, fresh, bright. It landed on Poirot's shoe with the precision of a conductor's downbeat. Someone bleeds still, he said, and the catacombs remember every note. Above them, the chandelier swayed, though no wind stirred. Somewhere in the dark, a cane tapped once, tap, then vanished into the wings. Chapter 3. The Masked Dress Rehearsal. Midnight draped the Royal Opera House in velvet hush. The auditorium lights were extinguished. Only the ghost light, a single bare bulb on a stand, cast a sickly pool across the stage. Hercule Poirot had transformed the theatre into a living diorama. Every performer, machinist and seamstress, 93 souls in total, stood frozen in the exact positions they had occupied at 10:42 p.m. The soprano, Signora Elena Valenti, held her candle aloft on the garret set. The tenor clutched his scarf in mid-gesture. Stage hands gripped ropes as if the snow might fall again at any second. Poirot paced the apron like a director possessed. His voice rang to the gods. Mesdames, messieurs, action! We replay the crime, but this time the murderer will betray himself by perfection. He had ordered the stiletto replaced on the prop table. Its twin, blunted, yet painted with luminous pigment that glowed under blacklight. The orchestra pit was rigged with a hidden ultraviolet lamp. As the reenactment began, the stage plunged into violet darkness. The audience, now Japp, Hastings and a dozen constables, gasped. The stiletto vanished from the table. Poirot clapped once. House lights flared. The dagger was now in the hand of the wardrobe mistress, Mrs. Finch, a sparrow of a woman with steel-rimmed spectacles. She dropped it with a shriek. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot said, retrieving the blade. "You moved it during the blackout. Your silhouette betrayed you against the snowflat. Why?" Mrs. Finch wrung her apron. "Signora Valenti asked me to swap the props at interval. Said the original was too sharp for the dual scene. I thought nothing of it." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet the original was sharpened after interval. Someone filed it in the 5 minutes before Act 3. He signalled to the conductor, now a nervous understudy. The orchestra struck the opening bars of the tavern scene. Fog machines exhaled lavender mist. The snow machine whirred. Signora Valenti began O Soave Fanciulla, her voice trembling with more than art. At the precise moment the high C should have soared, the recorded note crackled from the flies. Poirot had wired the phonograph to the grid. The soprano faltered. In that heartbeat of silence, a trapdoor beneath the orchestra pit yawned open with a groan of tortured hinges. A constable's torch revealed a velvet-lined compartment. 3 forged canvases, Rembrandt, Titian, Veronese, rolled tight as cigars. Beside them, a love letter in violet ink. "My eternal admirer. E. The pearls are yours once Alessandro is silenced. Meet me in the royal box at curtain." "Ah!" Japp pounced. "Ah! Could be anyone. Rossi himself." "Non," Poirot said. "The Count signed his ledgers A. This R is the buyer's accomplice." He turned to the tenor, Signor Riccardo Bellini, a peacock in green velvet. "You, monsieur, were seen arguing with the Count in the corridor at 10:30. About a necklace." Bellini flushed beneath his grease paint. He promised Elena the black pearls if she introduced him to a collector. Then he raised the price. I told him to go to the devil. Poirot finished. "Yet you were on stage when the note sounded." The reenactment continued. Stage hands hauled counterweights. The garret flat ascended into the flies. Poirot watched the ropes like a hawk. One line, painted with the same luminous pigment as the stiletto, glowed violet. It led to the chandelier's anchor point. "Arrêtez!" he commanded. The orchestra stopped mid-phrase. "The chandelier, lower it." Machinists obeyed. As the great crystal beast descended, a hidden panel in its bronze crown clicked open. Inside, a spool of violin string, a vial of belladonna distilled into liquid, and a pocket watch stopped at 10:37. The watch's back was engraved, "To my beloved Evie, forever, R.B." Hastings whistled. "R.B. Riccardo Bellini?" Poirot shook his head. "The initials are a blind. Observe the watch's mechanism. Tampered. The alarm was set to trigger the phonograph at 10:42, but the chandelier..." A scream cut him off. The chandelier, halfway down, shuddered. A counterweight, painted with invisible luminescent ink, had been sabotaged. The entire fixture plunged. Constables dove aside as 5 tons of crystal crashed exactly where the Count had sat in the royal box. Shards exploded like a starburst, embedding in velvet seats. Silence. Then Valenti fainted, candle rolling across the stage in a trail of wax. Poirot knelt amid the wreckage. Beneath the chandelier's base, a second black pearl, cracked but intact. He held it to the blacklight. Etched on its surface, microscopic, Act 4, the final note. The killer planned a second murder, he said. The chandelier was to fall on the Count's accomplice, eliminate the witness. But the Count died first, and the trap was never sprung. He rose, dusting crystal from his coat. The dress rehearsal reveals all. Mrs. Finch swapped the dagger on Valenti's orders. Bellini planted the phonograph. The stage manager, where is he? A nervous man in a bowler stepped forward. I moved the Count's body after the stabbing, thought it was a prank. Hid him behind the snow machine till curtain. Poirot's smile was thin. "You moved a corpse to protect the production, but you left the pearl." He addressed the company. The crime required 3 hands: the poisoner, the stabber, the silencer. The belladonna was in the Count's champagne, administered by the person who served it. The stiletto was carried by the person who could access the royal box unseen. The chandelier was rigged by the person who knew the grid. He pointed to Valenti, now revived and trembling. "You, Signora, served the champagne at 10:37. Your watch proves it. You poisoned him slowly, then stabbed him at the high C for drama. Bellini rigged the chandelier to silence you both. The stage hand discovered the forgeries and was strangled." Valenti's voice was a whisper. "Riccardo, he promised we'd run away with the Titian and the pearls," Poirot finished. "But love is a duet, and one singer always goes flat." He signaled Jap. Cuffs flashed. Bellini lunged for the wings, but a rope, still glowing violet, tripped him. Valenti collapsed, sobbing Puccini into the snow. Poirot stepped over the wreckage. The ghost light flickered, then steadied. Somewhere in the catacombs, a cane tapped once, tap, then fell silent. "The masks are off," he said, "but the score is not yet finished." Chapter 4. The score that predicted murder dawn bled through the opera house's stained glass dome, painting the wreckage of the chandelier in bruised purples and golds. Crystal shards glittered like fallen stars across the royal box, each fragment reflecting a different lie. Hercule Poirot stood on the stage apron, the bloodied libretto page spread beneath a magnifying lamp. The crimson ink had dried to the colour of rust, but the musical notations beneath it danced like black fireflies. He traced the staves with a gloved finger. "Regardez, Hastings, Puccini wrote in B-flat major. Yet here, the killer overwrote in C-sharp minor, discordant, deliberate. The notes are coordinates." Hastings squinted. "Coordinates to what?" "To the flies," Poirot said. "Grid 7's beam 4. We found the pearls, but the true treasure hides deeper." He summoned the stage manager, Mr. Reginald Hargreaves, a gaunt man with ink-stained cuffs and the haunted eyes of a man who had seen too many curtains fall. Poirot laid the libretto before him. "You moved the Count's body post-murder. Why?" Hargreaves swallowed. "Signora Valenti begged me. Said it was a prank gone wrong. She promised the Titian would buy my silence, my daughter's sanatorium fees." Poirot's gaze softened a fraction. "And the contract?" From his pocket, Hargreaves produced a parchment folded into a perfect square. It was a sale agreement. 1 Titian, Venus with mirror, to Count de Rossi for $58,000. Delivery tonight. Buyer to remain anonymous. EV. Beneath, a second clause in violet ink. Upon delivery, silence assured. Breach results in exposure of affair with R.B. "Riccardo Bellini," Hastings breathed. "The tenor." "Non," Poirot corrected. "R.B. is Reginald Hargreaves, Reginald Blackwood, before he changed his name to escape a scandal in 28. The affair was with Valenti's late husband, the baritone. The Count blackmailed him with letters." Hargreaves nodded, broken. "I forged the paintings to pay him off. Valenti discovered the ledger. She poisoned the champagne to stop the sale. Bellini rigged the chandelier to kill her before she implicated him." Poirot ascended to the flies via a rope ladder, the wood creaking like an old baritone. Grid 7, beam 4. The crate was empty save for a false bottom. He pried it open. Inside, the real stiletto, diamond-encrusted 16th century, its blade etched with the Valenti family crest. Beside it, a torn contract addendum. Final payment, 1 black pearl necklace, delivered in the royal box at Curtain. Failure results in public ruin. The necklace was the bait, Poirot said. Valenti planned to swap the real stiletto for the prop during the duel scene, but the Count arrived early, drunk on victory. She poisoned him in the corridor, then stabbed him in the box for spectacle. He descended, the stiletto gleaming in his hand. In the auditorium, the company had been locked in since the dress rehearsal. Poirot addressed them from the conductor's podium. "Mesdames, Messieurs, the score predicts murder, but it also predicts justice." He signalled the orchestra, now constables in ill-fitting tails. They struck the overture to La Bohème, backward. The notes unravelled into a minor key, then resolved into a hidden message spelled in Morse via rests and accents. The curtain falls on the guilty. Valenti, seated in the front row, went white as her grease paint. "That's impossible." "Non," Poirot said. "You composed it. The backward overture was your signal to Bellini. Chandelier falls at the high C. But the Count died early, and the signal never came." He turned to Bellini, who stood in the wings, scarf knotted like a noose. "You, monsieur, planted the phonograph in the catacombs. You strangled Carlo Bianchi when he discovered the forgeries. You rigged the chandelier with fishing line painted in luminescent ink, visible only under blacklight. But you forgot the counterweight's shadow." He produced a photograph, taken during the dress rehearsal under ultraviolet light. The counterweight's shadow fell across the royal box in the shape of a heart. "Your calling card, non? The heart you carved into Valenti's dressing-room mirror." Bellini lunged for the orchestra pit, but a violinist, actually a constable, tripped him with a bow. Valenti screamed, clawing at her throat where the black pearl necklace should have been. Only 18 pearls remained. The 19th, the one Poirot held, had been pried free during the struggle in the royal box. "The final pearl," Poirot said, "was your fee, signora, but the Count clutched it in death. It rolled free when Hargreaves moved the body." He laid the pieces on the conductor's stand. The real stiletto, the forged contract, the backward score, the luminescent counterweight. The orchestra played the final chord, discordant, unresolved. Valenti poisoned, Bellini strangled, Hargreaves concealed. 3 voices, 1 aria of greed. Japp moved in with cuffs. Valenti collapsed, sobbing, "Addio!" into the velvet seats. Bellini spat curses in Venetian dialect. Hargreaves simply stared at the chandelier's wreckage, as though seeing his daughter's future crumble with it. Poirot stepped down from the podium. The ghost light flickered, then steadied. He adjusted his camellia, now wilted but defiant. "The score is balanced," he said. "The opera ends." Outside, the first light of morning gilded the Thames. The Royal Opera House stood silent, its curtains drawn for the last time on this tragedy. No encore, no sequel, only the echo of a high C, forever unresolved. Chapter 5. The Final Curtain. Encore of Truth. The house lights blazed at 6 a.m., flooding the Royal Opera House in merciless white. The stage was bare save for the ghost light, now extinguished, and a single conductor's podium dragged to centre. The wreckage of the chandelier had been swept into neat piles of crystal that sparkled like frost under the floods. Every seat was occupied. Constables in plain clothes, ushers in livery, the entire company in costume or nightclothes, 93 witnesses to the unmasking. Hercule Poirot stood on the podium, immaculate despite the night's chaos. His evening dress was pristine, the wilted camellia replaced by a fresh white bloom. In one hand he held the diamond-encrusted stiletto, in the other the 19th black pearl, now threaded on a silver chain. Inspector Japp flanked him left, Hastings right. Behind, a blackboard bore a chalked timeline in Poirot's precise hand. "Mesdames, Messieurs," he began, voice ringing to the gods like a perfectly placed high C. "We perform the finale. No orchestra, no scenery, only truth, naked beneath the lights." He turned first to Signora Elena Valenti, seated in the front row, wrists cuffed, grease paint streaked with tears. "You, Signora, distilled belladonna from stage makeup, nightshade base, common in rouge pots. At 10:37, you served the Count champagne in the corridor, laced with enough to fell a horse by 10:42. The high C was your cue to stab, ensuring death appeared instantaneous." Valenti's chin lifted. "He ruined me. The Titian was my husband's legacy. Alessandro demanded the pearls and exposure of my affair with Reginald." Poirot pivoted to Riccardo Bellini, standing in the wings, scarf torn, eyes wild. "You, monsieur, forged the paintings in the catacombs. When Carlo Bianchi discovered the ledger, you strangled him with violin string, silver wound, E-string, the same you used to tune the phonograph. You rigged the chandelier with fishing line and luminescent counterweight, planning to crush Valenti at the climax. But the Count died early, and your trap became a tombstone." Bellini spat. "She betrayed me. The pearls were to be ours." Poirot faced Reginald Hargreaves, the stage manager, slumped in the orchestra pit, bowler hat crushed in his lap. "You, mon ami, moved the body at Valenti's plea. You hid it behind the snow machine, pried the final pearl free as proof of payment. But guilt is heavier than crystal. You left the luminescent outline in the catacombs, your confession in chalk." Hargreaves's voice was ash. "My daughter, the sanatorium, will be paid for by the crown," Poirot said gently. "Justice is not cruelty." He laid the stiletto on the podium. "The weapon's journey, forged in Venice, 1573, gifted to Valenti's husband, stolen by the Count, returned to the prop table by Mrs. Finch on Valenti's orders. Swapped mid-act by Bellini, who filed it sharp in the 5 minutes before Act 3. Used by Valenti in the royal box at the recorded high C." He held up the black pearl necklace. 19 pearls, 1 missing. "The payment, delivered by Hargreaves at interval. The Count clutched the 20th in death. It rolled free when the body was moved." Poirot stepped to the blackboard. With a flourish, he connected the timeline. 10:30. Bellini argues with Count in corridor. 10:37. Valenti poisons champagne. 10:42. Recorded high C plays. Valenti stabs. 10:45. Hargreaves moves body. 10:47. Bianchi discovers ledger, strangled. 11 Sieur, chandelier rigged, never triggered. He turned to the company. "The crime required precision. Valenti's poison, Bellini's phonograph, Hargreaves's silence, 3 voices, 1 fatal harmony." Japp moved forward with cuffs. Valenti rose, regal even in defeat. "I sang for love," she said. "He died for greed." Bellini lunged, but a stagehand's hook caught his ankle. He fell amid the crystal, blood mingling with champagne residue. Hargreaves surrendered without a word, eyes on the podium where the stiletto gleamed. Poirot descended the steps, the house lights dimmed to a single spot on the ghostlight stand. He placed the pearl necklace atop it, the diamonds of the stiletto catching the beam in a final, blinding flash. "The curtain falls," he said. "No encore." The constables led the trio away. Valenti through the auditorium, head high. Bellini through the wings, cursing. Hargreaves via the orchestra pit, shoulders bowed. The doors slammed. Silence reigned. Hastings closed his notebook. "And the forgeries? Recovered," Poirot said. "The Titian returns to its rightful owner. The pearls to the Count's estate. The opera house, cleansed." He stepped into the aisle. Dawn light now poured through the dome, gilding the empty seats in rose and gold. The stage was bare, the snow machine silent, the chandelier's absence a gaping wound in the ceiling. Poirot paused at the exit. Puccini wrote of love and death. Tonight, death won the aria, but justice, he twirled his moustache, justice takes the bow. Outside, the Thames glittered like a sequined gown. The Royal Opera House stood silent, its secret spent, its stage forever darkened by the truth. No phantom would sing again,